tell me, at what year, how many years ago was it a bad idea, right? I think it's always been a good idea if you can hold, right? As long as you can hold the property. And why is Manhattan a good idea? Because it's a granite island at the middle of Long Island Sound and the Hudson, and it's got great natural harbors. It's the gateway to North America. It was always the best place to put a port, right? And if you look at it and you cruise around it and you stare at it and you look at the fact you can build that on top of that schist, it's obvious people are going to want to live in and do business in that city for hundreds of years.
Michael Saylor, executive chairman and co-founder of MicroStrategy, talked to CNN's Guy Adami about what he thinks will be the next step in the acceptance of Bitcoin, which is the biggest cryptocurrency in the world by market cap. Saylor said what he thought could happen. To drive up the price of Bitcoin, the head of MicroStrategy says that the latest data from the Institute of International Finance shows that we are at a turning point in the world economy. More than half of the rise in global debt came from developed markets, mainly the US, France, and Germany. It rose by about $1.3 trillion to a new record high of $315 trillion in the first quarter of 2024. Because of more debt and less work getting done, in the past year, the world debt to GDP ratio has been steadily going down. It is now above 300%. Saylor says that the world's economy is going through an irreversible change that will require investors from sovereign wealth nations to multi-billion-dollar companies to change the way they spend right away. Saylor is sure that this change will be good for Bitcoin and very bullish for it because it will lead to more people using it and big price gains. Here are some clips from Saylor's conversation with Adami. This video has been liked, so please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on post alerts to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.
Keep adding, right? I mean, we'll keep adding Bitcoin. It's like asking, if you were asking, a real estate developer in the middle of New York City, oh, you own like 8 blocks of New York City.
When do you stop? Right.
When do you stop? The answer, well, we're going to buy the 9th block here when we can put together the financing, and then the 10th. And if you said, well, when are you going to divest from New York City? The answer is, if you talk to New Yorkers, there's nowhere better than New York City. So they're going to keep building. And when they can't build out, they're going to build up, right? And, it's like, well, I wanted to buy another 18 blocks, but I can't. So I rezoned the blocks I own, and I'm going to replace a 20-story building with a 100-story building. And there's Hudson Yards for you, or whatever it might be. MicroStrategy is going to keep developing its Bitcoin position. And yeah, it's going to get exponentially harder, right? This last week, you saw Block announce that they're going to start buying Bitcoin every month. You've seen accretion of Bitcoin by a lot of Bitcoin miners. A lot of them are actually not selling as much Bitcoin as they're mining now. I think you're going to see more Bitcoin miners buying more. I think you're going to see more Bitcoin exchanges buying more. I think you see the existing ETFs accumulating, but now we're up to 22 spot ETFs in the world, and they're all in a marketing war with each other. And so they're going to go harder. So I think, and at some point you're going to see these Russell 1000 companies, right? Which one of them wants to crawl out of their zombie state? It's like, you're just waiting for someone to decide they want the money. So I think that when they do that, they drive up the price of Bitcoin, and I have to chase it. My first Bitcoins were below 10,000, and and I'm buying Bitcoin in the 60s now, and that's okay. I don't know where we'll get to. I know we'll get more. We'll accrete from here. We will acquire more Bitcoin than we have right now, and we'll do it via organic cash and via debt, especially convertible debt, and we'll do it via equity. And that'll be a function of capital markets and all sorts of other dynamics. But I think, Archimedes said, you give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, I can move the world. Well, the place to stand is Bitcoin, right? I mean, it's not a commodity, it's a scarcity. So if it's a scarcity, it's like if I said to you, there's one city, it's at the trade crossroads of the world. It's the center of the digital economy one day everybody on the planet's going to be moving their capital through that city, but there's only 276 by 276 by 276 blocks in that city. And by the way, it's like 94% occupied, but you can buy another one of those blocks if you want. Do you want to buy some more? And the answer is, yeah, I want to keep buying, because just like if I could have bought New York or Manhattan 100 years ago, or 50 or 200 or 30 or 300, tell me, at what year, how many years ago was it a bad idea, right? I think it's always been a good idea. If you can hold, right? As long as you can hold the property. And why is Manhattan a good idea? Because it's a granite island at the middle of Long Island Sound and the Hudson, and it's got great natural harbors. It's the gateway to North America. It was always the best place to put a port, right? And if you look at it and you cruise around it and you stare at it and you look at the fact you can build that on top of that schist, it's obvious people are going to want to live in and do business in that city for hundreds of years.
Block, Inc. CEO Jack Dorsey said earlier this month that the banking giant would buy Bitcoin every month to keep its books in order. Dorsey, who used to be the CEO of Twitter, posted a document on the social media site called Bitcoin Blueprint for Corporate Balance Sheets. With the caption block is dollar cost averaging Bitcoin every month, the document says that the company is announcing a new corporate balance sheet dollar cost average DCA program in which it will invest 10% of its monthly gross profit from Bitcoin products every month. During his conversation with Atomy, the company also talked about its current Bitcoin holdings, which include purchases made in 2020 and 2021. According to the document, Square, as of March 31, 2024, held 8,038 Bitcoin, which was about 9% of its total cash, cash equivalents, and marketable securities. Saylor says that Block will be the first company to do this, and that many more will follow in the years to come as the world economy shows more signs of weakness. Let us go back to the talk.
$900 trillion of capital or wealth in the world, and I think there's 1 trillion in the Bitcoin network. So 0.1% of the economic wealth in the world has found its way into digital property. Most of the people don't have an hour to talk. Like most of the world, I'm sure Charlie Munger never listened to a 2-hour podcast on Bitcoin. So most of the wealth in the world is in the hands of people that don't really understand what Bitcoin is. And a lot of the advocates of Bitcoin, they have been intentionally confrontational or inflammatory, and they've gotten into a bunch of other debates. Like, does Bitcoin stand for, replacing banks or replacing currency or replacing government or replacing whatever? No. What is Bitcoin? Is digital capital. What's the addressable market of digital capital? Somewhere between 100 and 400 trillion dollars. So what is Bitcoin? It's 100 to 400x from here once you understand what it is. So what's the impediment? Well, the impediment is just education. And so what are we doing? We're educating, I go and I give a speech in Vegas, and, there could be a few hundred or a few thousand people in the room, but then 1 million people will watch the speech online. I sat with Lex Friedman and I talk about Bitcoin and economics.
For over 3 hours. I watched it.
Okay. 9.1 million other people have watched it. But, every day, Guy, another 10 or 20,000 people watch it. It's a residual. Now imagine I retired and went off to be a college professor to teach students 1,000 a year. It's like your entire career, you don't get to 20,000 people. So Bitcoin's an idea whose time has come. And if you interpret it as digital currency, you get anxiety and you get inflamed and it's hard to make progress. But if you interpret it as digital capital, you think, wow, this is good for every country, every bank, every company, every person, everybody I ever met. It's just a universal good thing. It's about as good as digital information or digital communication. You don't find anybody that doesn't like technology. Why am I going to Prague? I'm going to Prague just to explain why this is a good thing, and yet a different way. It'll be recorded. there'll be 2,000 people that'll be in Prague, and they'll be Bitcoin maximalist, and they'll be ideologically passionate individuals. But the hope always is to explain to everybody in Europe or everybody in the rest of the world why it's in their best interest to embrace a new technology. When you just think of it as technology, electricity, steel, there's no ideology associated with it. It's not going to solve all the other problems in the world. Like, we're not going to solve the problem of wealth inequality, or censorship, or lack of freedom, or the fact that you disagree on this fiscal policy or that foreign policy. And those are all just very admirable things to work on. It's just not what I do. I believe you have to have laser like focus on doing one thing. And if you laser like focus in on one thing, maybe you'll be able to make a contribution, and you ought to be grateful for the opportunity to make a single contribution. So my contribution right now, is to advocate for Bitcoin as digital property, digital capital, digital technology to make everybody's life better.
Saylor's analogy about Bitcoin and real estate in major cities like New York is a particularly brilliant one, because not only does it reveal the asset's immense value, but it also answers the question of whether it's too late to buy. In a previous interview, the MicroStrategy CEO explained that New York was already the greatest city in North America by 1776, more than 100 years after it was founded by Dutch colonists around 1624. Anyone who had wanted to buy property in New York in 1776 would probably have considered themselves late to the party and thought those who got in earlier quite lucky. Yet people have continued to invest in the city and make great returns on their money for hundreds of years since then. Saylor reckons the same is going to happen with Bitcoin. Some people bought when one coin was under $100, some when it was $10,000 per coin, and millions are going to buy when a coin is selling for $100. 000 or even $1 million, and investors on all levels will make their money in multiple folds. What do you think about Michael Saylor's plans for the most important digital asset in the long term? Leave your ideas and comments below, and don't forget to click like on this video, put post alerts on, and follow the channel to see more movies. Thanks for coming.